Let's take a look at how one city was able to build their risk scorecard based on their existing information. So this particular city had already developed a strategy plan, and within that had cascaded it down to different departments. Within each department, they identified the specific strategic objectives to cast them through the next 5 years. Now, they had a risk register, but they weren't sure it was complete. So what we did is we took the ISO 31000 and CASO concepts as sort of a checklist, and we worked on that checklist to modify a list of risks that the city thought they should be worried about in their broader sense of the risk universe. Then based on that, they used the strategic objectives and those risk classifications to rate and rank whether they thought these classifications were impacting each of these risks. And as you can see, the length of the bar represented where they thought there may be risk occurring in each of these categories. In fact, we're able to tally it up overall to give them an overall view of which risk categories look like might be occurring or could occur in the city. They then took these risk categories and detailed them out as specific risk elements and went through the traditional 1 to 5 scoring of each of those risk elements. So again, the risk elements were identified. We did also ask them for the likelihood and then took a look at the impact of each risk element against each of those strategic objectives. Based on this work, they were able to build their overall risk scorecard. The risk scorecard includes those strategic objectives and the overall priorities for this planning period. It took a look at those risk categories and identified the specific risks to put in the risk register. They then took a look at that risk likelihood and impact scoring they did, and that became the impact column. And then finally, they took a look at their existing reports, data that they communicated to the citizens, to council, and so forth, and they used that to get the performance measures. This took the city only 5 days to build out because they had the strategy, the measures, the risk register, all those things available, and we merely needed to take the right team through the right conversation to come up with these answers. In fact, what it looked like is a bit like this. First off, we captured the existing strategy, and the executive, of course, spent a few hours just fine-tuning that strategy for us to use to make sure it's up to date, and the board reviewed and approved that. Then, we worked on surfacing the risks. Specifically, we used the risk category assessment from the risk team. Based on their recommendations, they presented those to the executive who reviewed and approved them. They then went off to identify the specific risk elements to use, and that was what they used in the assessment. For the assessment, again, the risk team did that assessment over a 6-hour period. The executives reviewed and approved that, and in fact the board reviewed that work and approved that as well. Finally, they built out the risk scorecard. The risk team took the existing data and targets and built out the scorecard. They then calculated the risk appetite and tolerance based on those numbers, and that was reviewed and approved by executive and then the board.